Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. A lengthy read from Owen Lewis in reference to this past weekend's action that those who helped Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson happen are the problem, but not those who watched it.
Oh?
We cannot blame the viewers for the disaster that was Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, though I catch myself wanting to. There were too many of them. They did not know the extent of the damage which Mike Tyson had taken in the past, perhaps dabbling in cocaine and mushrooms and toad venom. Yep. And frankly, asking people to spend their time on this earth reading about this stuff is unreasonable. More than that, it seems like a lot of people wanted to see Jake Paul in great physical pain and ignored logic. Plus the fact that he is competent at boxing. In pursuit of that desire, there was plain curiosity in some viewers, the urge to be part of the thing everybody was talking about, if also stupidity, delusion, or malice in others. But they did not make this fight. We can blame the people who did, starting with Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, and their respective support networks. The Netflix executives, the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration, who sanctioned a 58-year-old man to get his brain bashed in a little bit more legally, and anybody who had a hand in promoting the fight. It's the last group that helped hoodwink many of the viewers into believing that somehow said 58-year-old man could regain the zeal that he had at 18, 40 years ago. A window almost twice as long as I have been alive for just one night. The promotion was insidious, beginning with the matchup itself. It weaponized Mike Tyson's name, a once terrifying heavyweight, and a figure still magnetic enough that his 1992 rape conviction and other various atrocities is no more than a footnote in most stories about him. Regrettably, this one included, though it is not a story about Mike Tyson. Donald Trump once said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters. Mike Tyson is one of maybe 4 people on the planet who could say the same. The promotion harnessed to Jake Paul's inherent loathsomeness. No one professionally affiliated with the fight would say the true appeal of the fight outright. So I will here the chance to see one of the most annoying people in the world beaten up and humiliated in front of a global audience.
Owen Wilson didn't pull any punches.
So he's not wrong. That was part of the appeal for some people. The chance to see Iron Mike enter the ring again and shut up this YouTuber, this party crasher, this guy who does not belong.
That is why some people were watching.
Then came the outright lies. A commercial for the fight that popped up on various streams of mine multiple times showed footage of Tyson violently knocking out Michael Spinks in 1988. Woof! Since then, Tyson has been knocked out 5 times, done prison time, aged just 36 years, and done drugs in volumes that probably would have killed a few elephants. But none of that mattered for the purposes of this fight. Okay then.
All right.
The public bought the bullshit in sufficient numbers that Netflix is claiming the fight reached 2 more households than Tyson's age, times 1 million. But that doesn't mean this fight and anybody involved in it get a pass for appealing to all the worst instincts of human beings. Media members fell into the trap too. Ostensibly, serious people who cover boxing previewed this fight. They wondered about Tyson's power, his stamina, his speed. What will happen if he hits Paul flush? They queried. Can Paul take those punches? The answer was always yes, because as it turns out, 58-year-olds punch a whole lot less hard than 27-year-olds. And the surprise at how awful Tyson looked or the outright denial, Tyson looked slow and unsteady in a dull loss to Jake Paul, read the subheading to Emmanuel Morgan's The Athletic, New York Times recap, Netflix's take for the nothing it's worth. Tyson showed signs of his life as a champion throughout the fight. I slept over with a friend that night. One of their group chats pinged with an offer of a $25 bet that Tyson would win. I told my pal that when Tyson looked his age, the bettor in question would say the fight was rigged, which happened right on cue, 5 or 6 minutes in, though not without enduring hope that Tyson would summon that dog. The dog, along with Tyson's speed and steadiness and vigor, died somewhere between Y2K and the Obama administration.
As you can see, Owen Wilson, the author of this article, he's not holding back.
By design, I didn't watch the fight, but I have seen the moment in the third round when Paul hurt and wobbled Tyson with a succession of glacially slow left hooks. I sought this out because I wanted to punish myself for being involved in this sport at all. I've read that Paul let the old man off the hook after that. Perhaps they had a deal not to go for the knockout, but I do like the idea that a hint of compassion seized Paul in that moment, that the money he made for the fight, more than almost everybody in the world will see across their entire lives, wasn't enough to ensure he would sleep well at night.
This is where I'm at odds with Owen Wilson and other boxing aficionados like him. You keep asking boxing to have a conscience when it comes to Jake Paul, even though it doesn't have a conscience any other time. And that rears its head in several forms, like doping within the sport, the people that are actually giving Ryan a pass for testing positive for a banned substance, the corrupt sanctioning bodies,
their brazen chicanery, that there is ample evidence that boxing was a circus already before Jake Paul came into it.
Don't get on a high horse now.
Owen Wilson continued. The narrative that Tyson is the victim is tempting. Unquestionably, he should have not been allowed to fight, but he signed up for this, knowing better than anybody else what his body could and couldn't do, and what getting punched feels like. If his inner circle tried to talk him out of the fight, he did not listen. He was paid very well for his 16 minutes of masochism. The people who watched this, blind and misled, confident that they were not in fact going to watch the public battering of someone 5 times closer to the social security than his athletic prime, are the wronged party here. Does it bring people joy, lying to the masses, twisting and corrupting their reality until they want to do something clearly against their best interests? It is inevitable that immense groups
legions
of people will have hateful tendencies, that they will deny reality, that they will not, at any cost, admit being wrong. What can be controlled is taking advantage of these deep flaws. It is not to the audience's credit that they expected a better version of Mike Tyson, but that expectation was enabled at every possible turn. In an ideal world, imperfections would still exist, but we would be better at not letting them destroy us. Evil is in those who prey on flaws, prying and widening them, encouraging and further warping the worst in people. Some of them helped this farcical fight happen. In an ideal world, it is they who would not exist, but instead of there, we live here.
Is Jake Paul an opportunist? Absolutely. But isn't the sport of boxing rife with opportunists and opportunism? Hasn't that always been the case, that you want to get on your high horse now?
I don't see the point, as opportunism is very much the name of the game for people within the industry.
It's the industry standard.
Looking at the situation objectively, Jake Paul's opportunism is not that dissimilar from what you see in, say, a Gervonta Davis, who avoided a Vasyl Lomachenko fight for something like 7 years, waiting for him to get older, waiting for him to slow down.
What is that if not opportunism?
So that when he finally does, and he's lost 1 or 2 more fights, that's when Gervonta wanted to make a fight with him. Now you tell me, what is that if not opportunism?
What are you saying?
That if what the author of this long-winded article is trying to get across is that the people within the industry of boxing are somehow morbid, or the audience that consumes it,
Tell me something I don't know.
that they are somehow lacking a conscience and are less than virtuous, yeah, I know.
This is how boxing operates most of the time. Jake Paul is no different.
Boxing, without Jake Paul, is full of opportunists. You expect him to be different.
He's not to blame.
And so, if what all of this is intended to be is a social commentary on the moral turpitude of those associated with this event, who put it together, as well as the audience that consumes it, that it is somehow morbid?
That these are not good people.
What, you're just now realizing that? You can add the names of Andre Ward and Antonio Tarver to the long list of bona fide professionals, retirees, and champions that won a piece of Jake Paul. Current,
Active and retired fighters alike, anyone from Andre Ward to Antonio Tarver to Ryan Garcia, because the spectrum is that broad.
they all want to fight him. And what do you think their intentions are? Do you think their intentions are noble? Being as experienced as they are, wanting to share the ring with a novice. It's not that I think there's anything virtuous about Jake Paul at 27 fighting a 58-year-old man.
Quite the opposite.
That's opportunism. I view it as opportunistic, but just as opportunistic as experienced professionals wanting to share the ring with a novice for no reason other than the cash incentive. It's the same thing. And thus, maybe Owen Lewis's real problem is that he was expecting them to be better, or he expected better from the sport he loves, from the sport he watches. He was expecting better, as I cannot ignore the moral undertone in his outrage.
They're all opportunists.
You could take Jake Paul away from the sport of boxing right now, and it wouldn't change nothing about the way business is done in this industry. They didn't wait until he fought Mike Tyson to try to capitalize off of his audience. When he was fighting basketball players and MMA guys,
Wasn't Mayris Breedis and Clarissa Shields calling him out?
when he was fighting people that were about as experienced as he is in a boxing ring, the boxers themselves, the real ones, they were still trying to take advantage.
Now, this latest endeavor might have ruffled their feathers even more, because this one was with Mike Tyson, one of the most beloved fixtures in all of boxing. He transcends the sport.
But let's set aside the virtue signaling.
The bullshit.
I feel like Jake Paul is to boxing what the Joker is to Gotham City.
What?
A reflection of its people, a byproduct of their condition, and a consequence of their actions, their practices. An event like this could not be as successful as it was if there weren't already an audience for it. So what does that tell you? And if the people within boxing had any kind of a moral code, you would have never been able to put it together.
But he did. So what does that tell you?
Ahead of the Tommy Fury fight, Mauricio Suleiman, the head of the World Boxing Council, offered to give the winner of the fight a rank in their rank standings, trying to attach himself to Jake Paul's celebrity, to his success.
For fighting, at least at that time, little more than basketball players and MMA fighters, not actual pugilists, not actual boxers, that the people in boxing are too willing to sell their souls.
But they've always been that way. That didn't start with Jake.
It's the truth.
You use Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury's younger brother, as an example. So this is a guy that when he started out, at least it seemed like he was trying to have a serious boxing career, like his older brother. But it didn't take him long to join the circus, and that's where he is now. He's about to box a UFC guy in Darren Till. Not a seasoned journeyman, not a gatekeeper he can derive experience from.
He's clearly not building himself up to fight for a title one day.
Because this circus affords him a shortcut to where he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to get at a title to make millions and millions of dollars. He can box a UFC guy in a circus fight, and he's okay with that. Moreover, he probably never had the ability to get into world title contention anyway. He likely would have lost along the way.
Think about it. Tommy was gonna become a world champion? That if the only way for Tommy to get at a 7-figure purse was to build himself up the old-fashioned way, well, he never would have got there. He would have lost along the way.
Why go through hell and back to become something you can't when the circus pays better?
Doesn't he have any dignity, though?
No! And that's the point I'm making. You've got to stop looking at this industry, this sport, and the people in it with rose-tinted lenses. They're not as virtuous or noble.
Please.
When evaluating what's happening within the sport, the actual sport, away from Jake Paul's circus, I always lean towards the worst in all these people. The worst in the promoters, the managers, the fighters.
They're not superheroes.
They are opportunists. So in that regard, they're not that different from Jake. No, his opportunism is a lot more extreme than someone else's and more successful.
But the ideology is the same. The hierarchy of thought is the same. Mitigating the risks for the most rewards. We see that all the time.
So I like to think of myself as an arbiter of truth, albeit inconvenient. I didn't actually watch that card for Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, even though that was the main selling point. I actually watched it for Katie and Amanda.
And I got what I wanted, more or less.
But if you were one of these cockeyed optimists expecting a 58-year-old Mike Tyson to turn back the clock, you're experiencing is buyer's remorse, in a manner of speaking, as you didn't actually have to buy this fight. It wasn't a pay-per-view, but it's buyer's remorse in the sense that if Mike Tyson would have won, do you think that Owen Lewis would be standing on his soapbox talking about how unethical all of this is?
If Mike would have knocked him out.
What that rhetorical question is intended to reveal is that Owen's baser impulses are not that different from the people that he's criticizing, because there are no shortage of hypocrites in this sport, along with dubious business practices.
I think that what a lot of people are really angry about is that Jake Paul outsmarted them. You use the name of a Mike Tyson, a guy everybody knows and everybody loves, to draw them to your latest event.
As you know, it's going to pull at their heartstrings to see Iron Mike in the squared circle once again. Perhaps for the last time. You know what they think of you, that many of them don't like you and would relish the opportunity to see you hurt, to see you down.
Take advantage.
They already don't like you. You might as well make some money from it. And that's what he did, and that's what you're mad at.
Knows you better than you know yourself.
No matter how much you bitch, and how much you moan and whine about what he's doing and how unethical all of it seems, when push comes to shove, you can't look away.
Knows you. Knows who you are.
What you are, and what the fighters are. Opportunists. Just like he is. They're all opportunists.
Is he the devil?
No, he's just an opportunist. And being the bad guy doesn't bother him as much as it might bother someone else who wants to appear virtuous and noble.
Courageous.
All a facade. Because how many of these esteemed professionals do you see lining up around a block for a chance to win a sweepstakes?
If it bothers you that much, you boycott the event.
Disassociate yourself completely. He's doing it for attention, so you don't give him any, if that's what it's all about. If it bothers you. But if you're just another retired fighter looking to cash in, or worse, an active one, well, you're just as much a part of the problem as he is, if he is a problem.
The problem child.
Didn't that used to be his nickname? I think he should change his nickname to the Symptom, because Jake is a symptom, but a symptom to a problem.
What's the problem?
American boxers just ain't what they used to be. The American boxing scene just isn't what it used to be. This sport doesn't respect itself. So how can you expect the outsiders to respect it?
An outsider like Jake.
I don't think Jake is the bad guy. I think he's smart. Smart enough to know what he can use against you to make money.
And that's not different from what the promoters do.
So if what you want to do is fix it, boxing's gotta do better. It's what I said in my previous video. If what are supposed to be the bona fide professionals were doing what they're supposed to be doing, capturing the audience's imagination with their fights, creating excitement, organically, there wouldn't be room for Jake Paul's circus.
So many people wouldn't immediately put on their nostalgia goggles at the chance to see a 58-year-old Mike Tyson turn back the clock.
They wouldn't be stuck on the past if they were satisfied and entertained in the present. The problem is, they're not.
They're bored.
What needs to happen doesn't happen often enough, fast enough in conventional boxing, thus creating a lane for Jake Paul to do his thing.
And I ain't even mad at him.